Good morning and welcome to Main and Center on WBTA. I am Jim Krenzik with the Genesee County Economic Development Center here with Dan Fisher and, of course, my partner in crime, Chris Swazi, the Vice President of Business and Workforce Development at the GCEDC. We are very pleased once again to sponsor this month's segment and keep the public informed as to how our agency is furthering economic development in our region. And we are very pleased to have on the phone Tom Lievens, the Vice President of People and Culture for Edwards Vacuum, and Scott Balaguer, the Vice President for Business Development at Edwards Vacuum. Of course, Scott and Tom are part of one of the biggest projects to come to our region in quite some time. Edwards Vacuum has made a major investment into the stamp site in the Genesee County, and we are excited to share how that process is going and what to look forward to as Edwards Vacuum grows right here in Genesee County. With that said, I want to transfer to Chris, because Chris, you have been really the tour guide as Scott, Tom, and many members of the executive team at Edwards Vacuum have been not only here in Batavia, but also to all our partners in Buffalo and Rochester. What has been the story you've been sharing as many of these folks are first learning about Edwards Vacuum?
Yeah, the first story is certainly they're in the semiconductor industry. So they're not vacuum cleaners, as the name may suggest. They're in a critical role. They're like the number one supplier for semiconductors, computer chip fabrications that are been recently announced in the United States. Of course, we got Micron, the closest in the Syracuse area, as well as Global Foundries in the Albany area. So we've been really thrilled with them because we're showing off our location. And of course, their number one concern is workforce and workforce development. So they were really enthused about seeing the assets we have from Buffalo to Batavia to Rochester. And that's what we really spent a lot of time with over the last 3 days with them.
And really, I think the truth is, as you go from Buffalo to Rochester, the real feeling is one of like a shared goal. I think when we were at UB, we were talking to, their dean was just saying, I was talking about the U of R and RIT deans, and we were excited to have you today because they know they're going to have you on Thursday. So I believe we have Tom and Scott with us right now. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. Sorry we couldn't be there personally. The winter weather got the best of us this morning on the freeway.
Hey, well, that is one of the best parts of this. I think we've all learned together about how the Western New York community helps each other out even when it is a little snowy out there. So, Scott, Chris kind of walked through a little bit about Edwards Vacuum. I think the real truth here is you've given a great introduction to so many of our partners. Just kind of explain a little bit what semiconductor dry pump manufacturing entails and kind of the role that equipment plays in producing all these everyday items.
Yeah, so I think, as Chris mentioned, everybody knows that there's been a chip shortage of late, right? And the need for semiconductors and integrated circuits has never been greater, and it continues to grow year by year. In fact, we expect that the semiconductor industry will at least reach $1 trillion here by the end of the decade. And Edwards is a key integral supplier of vacuum and abatement equipment that's used in the manufacturing of the chip. So we support all the big customers that we talked about a minute ago, but across the globe and across North America as well. And the whole goal of this factory that we're going to put into the Stamp Genesee County is to provide the capacity that's required to support that industry.
And I know it's one of the major goals here of our community has been to locate projects, where they're able to pull from our hydropower services out of Niagara Falls. And actually what Edwards is doing, Dan, they are able to now relocate a lot of this manufacturing. Previously, it's equipment that was being flown over from their manufacturing base on the other side of the Pacific Ocean to all these semiconductor fabs that we have across our country, of course, Oregon, Texas, here in New York, and in the future in Ohio. And I think the other great thing about capacity, and Tom has shared this really well, is there's a real capacity for folks to come into the organization, whether they are the students coming out of our BOCES programs or our very talented folks coming out of an institution like UB or RIT. And Tom, for people who are first getting an impression of Edwards Vacuum, could you kind of explain the culture and the sorts of people that really succeed in the organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the culture of Edwards is, we can describe as a very family-oriented company. It's we put diversity very high on the agenda. I explained to the partners that we've met during this week that we started years ago with gender diversity. And we set ourselves a target in achieving 30% female representation by 2030. And for an industrial manufacturing company, that's quite a challenge. And today we're already at 23%. So it's still a long way to go, but we managed to do quite well. And now, the recent years, we moved away from gender diversity, and we are now partnering up with organizations that will give us access to people with a disability. We've talked this week with organizations that do veteran programs, refugee programs, minority groups in the region. So we are really looking at different groups of people to come and work for us, because if I can put it in two words, what we exactly need is passionate people. We are pretty convinced that whenever people have a degree or they don't have a degree but they got reskilled, upskilled, they know what they have to do. But what really makes the difference is the passion that people have. So passionate people, that's what we are looking for.
Well, wonderful. And I think Chris and Scott, really, this has been a two passionate people, I think, since we first started learning about both our community and Edwards Vacuum. Chris, could you kind of just jump in a little bit on what you saw as the big assets to bring in here, and then Scott, following up with just sort of what led this project to locate in our community? I think it really reinforced that same idea of the passion of our people.
Yeah, so it definitely starts with the site. Of course, Stamp site is a 1,250-acre mega site. We've been promoting it for 15 years, but it takes that long, right, trying to do a big campus mega site. And we were really focused on the infrastructure that's required and the timelines to get a company like Edwards in a short amount of time. So I think, having said that, on the infrastructure, Scott, go ahead. I'll pass the baton back to you and give us, your reasons.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of key reasons. We looked at probably 12 different sites across 3 different states before we finally settled on Stamp. But, we had to do our part to bring reshoring or onshoring of the semiconductor industry back into the U.S. And once that was the number one objective, we had to find a place to do that. And we wanted a facility in a community, a place that was environmentally sound so that we could use hydropower to run this factory. That was a key decision so that we didn't have to put this equipment on an airplane from Korea. And then equally as important was the workforce development program. We view Genesee County, the Buffalo, Niagara, Rochester region as just a great place to populate this factory with everybody from operators and assemblers right through management. And the local cooperation from all of the entities has just been outstanding and has reinforced our decision to come to this area.
Well, we've loved to hear that. And I think, Chris, in setting up the past week, all the groups that we've met with, whether it is, our BOCES and GCC, Northlands Training Center in Buffalo, some of the advanced training programs in Rochester, how do you set up that, and how are you helping really bring this deployment? Because this is obviously one of the largest projects, 343 jobs in this first phase. And it's accomplishment. I haven't seen you sweating on this. It might just be because it's January, but you've done a great job.
Well, it's the Coach Swaz stuff that happens, right, in workforce development. And it does start in K through 12. We have a robust system from the mechatronics that we do, from all our activities like Glow with Your Hands and others that we're trying to, infuse into the students these careers in STEM and skilled trades. And ultimately, landing Edwards is the caveat that now they can understand why this mission was what we're doing in workforce development. And then, like you said, you're bringing in the 2-year schools at MCC and GCC and ECC, right, and the Northland Training Center and the Finger Lakes Forward Center, and then you got RIT and UB, and then when you're actually talking about it, and then, I'll send it back to Scott to say it's a little different story when you see the numbers than you actually see the people and the passion, and I'll turn that back to Scott to give us his reaction of what he actually physically seen over the last 3 days.
Yeah, just really an overwhelming signal of support and willingness to work with us. And, we're going to be in the midst now of putting together a strong marketing communication program so that we can get back with these entities that we've worked with. We're going to be visible at job fairs and on websites, and working within the community colleges and vocational areas. And we'll be putting together curriculums and so forth for a training program that will get this best and brightest community excited about coming to Edwards and excited about the semiconductor industry.
And Tom, I think that's a role that obviously your perspective has really, I think, opened my eyes to this. As you guys are looking to really be progressive in hitting the ground running here, not that we're going to start bringing folks over there yet, where we have a facility to build, but how have these meetings and connections helped in your planning?
Yeah, it was really helpful because in the end we are new in the region. So the last couple of days really gave us an overview on the different types of organizations that exist that are involved in workforce development. And to be honest, I'm really impressed. It's a lot what is currently happening here, and we will be able to collaborate. And it's what I said to a couple of people that I've met this week. We need you to be successful. We can't do this on our own. We need partnerships. We need these organizations. And without those partnerships, we will never be able to do what we have to do.
And I can say in our experience, I know when we were over at MCC just yesterday, seeing the spark in some of the instructors' faces as they realized the full depth of this. They were asking a couple of questions to understand what type of CNC manufacturing might be involved. And then as they got it, it was like the kid who just found out they're going to Disney World. They were already running through in their heads all the ways that they want to improve their programs. Not that the programs were not already among the top in the nation, but to fit those into the types of workers that Edwards is going to be employing and really putting into rewarding careers. Scott, I know there's a lot of milestones to hit. I guess one of the things we'd love to share too is sort of how Edwards views its role in the community and sort of in this next couple of years as the facility gets built and we start bringing in members of our neighborhoods and communities to be part of the team.
Yeah, I think, as Tom mentioned, culturally, this organization is based on diversity, and we're based on science-based initiative targets, so we're good environmental stewards. As we build this factory out, we'll eventually hit 600 people, and we want those folks to come from this area. And so I think you'll see us involved in regular community events. You'll see us at job fairs. You'll see us on the radio, wherever we need to be, to promote why Edwards is a great place to work, and again, why we think the best and the brightest these days should get back into the semiconductor industry as we reshore that into America.
And Chris, I know that's one of the discussions where obviously when we're starting off students with like a boxcar derby when they're 8 years old, they may not be thinking right away, because of course the boxcar itself is you're swinging a hammer using a saw. There's no microchips in it last year, maybe next year.
Yet.
But how are you bringing that up with students so they can actually start to broaden their perspective and understand, really what's possible, as they work hard on their schoolwork and these special projects?
Right, educating the students about careers, especially careers that are in their backyard, is so important, and doing it in K through 12 is the sweet spot, right? Especially like middle school and in high school. So why are you taking STEM classes? Then you start relating STEM into the semiconductor industry and understanding that your phones all run on chips. As Scott said earlier this week, Google and Facebook don't operate unless you have semiconductors, and so that kind of hits home. And as well as Scott said this week as well, it's the passion, the enthusiasm of being in the semiconductor industry is so exciting and so rewarding, and they certainly will be at Edwards.
I think it comes back to that idea of course, in our community, there's so much pride of place. When you've seen, obviously, multiple generations of families that have gone into, our number one industry for many, many years has been agriculture. The pride of feeding, people with healthy and nutritious foods. You look at our manufacturing base, where people have been so proud to work on projects that they see, sometimes in their homes, sometimes it's in major, industries. And that ability to do that, and I think really the spirit of our community, that's where Edwards really matches up so nicely. Mm-hmm. And Chris, I'll throw it back to you. And I know we've talked a lot about this, and obviously there's many programs. I think the real story here is that it's going to take all of these partners. There's no one solution.
100%.
But for our families, what are the sorts of programs that they should be encouraging? That student who's 13 years old, 20 years old, 8 years old, what should they be encouraging them to join up into? And I know some of those are right here in our backyard.
Yeah, so again, STEM, right? Why are we taking science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEAM? You add the art to that. So you're seeing a lot of our kids, especially we're seeing grades 3 through 5. There's a STEAM Jam happening March 23rd. There's a Tech Wars happening on March 23rd as well at GCC. So there's activities that you're taking, in the classroom, math and science, but then there's applied learning, which takes you to another level and gets you to, touch it and feel and put your hands on things. So those activities are incredible for students to start inspiring towards these great career paths, and that's what it is. The key is career path, and I think, Tom, you said it well this week too. The journey. Why don't you just quickly touch upon the journey?
Yeah, it's. I say that to a lot of people. We offer people not a job, but we offer them a journey. Once you start in our company, we are a global company, so there are plenty of opportunities, international opportunities. We have a big footprint in the U.S., so people can move from one state to the other state. People move horizontally, people move vertically. There's plenty of opportunities, and I'm an example of that. I'm a Belgian national. I'm working in the headquarters in the United Kingdom. We have people today from the U.S. who are working in Korea. We have people from Korea who are working in the U.K. So once you are in our organization, there will be plenty of opportunities, and then it's up to the employee, up to the individual to grab the opportunity, and we are there to help them and to support them in making their dream come true.
And Tom, I know it's been one of the points whenever we've talked to any of our representatives in the training field, having that, both the ambitious goal of growing women in the manufacturing space as well as encouraging young women to get involved in these careers, has really, I think, lit a fire, because our training programs have much of the same mission, and it's one of those things where it takes all of us to really push hard on this, because unfortunately, oftentimes there are believed hindrances that someone may not get into manufacturing. Could you just explain a little bit of some of the ways that women in the Edwards world have really succeeded in these manufacturing careers, growing to, over 23% of that workforce being women? Is incredible, and I know we're excited to help grow those numbers even further.
Yeah, it's partially a mentality change. When we started with our gender diversity program, we got a lot of comments in the manufacturing area on the shop floor from team leaders. This is too heavy. Our equipment is too heavy for females, and that is nonsense. I mean, by definition, if it's too heavy for a female, it's too heavy for a man. That was our mantra that we used. So there cannot be such a thing as a physical limitation. We have developed tools. We have developed, redesigned our factories, the layout, to make everything accessible, whatever gender you are, to work for us.
I think that's a great place to close this first impression of Edwards. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have safe travels. I know there is much traveling to come here as Edwards becomes a part of our community. But Scott and Tom, thank you so much, Chris, for joining us, and of course Dan Fisher and the team at WBTA for bringing us all together today.
Thanks, guys. Safe travels.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Thank
and
you.
Chris, we really appreciate it. See you soon.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Get a head start and pay less at Feral Gas.